I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, my champagne-soaked dress clinging to my skin, droplets running down my face like humiliating tears. The DJ had stopped the music. 300 guests stared at me in shocked silence. My brother Marcus stood 5 feet away, an empty champagne bottle dangling from his hand, his face twisted with rage and something darker, triumph. "That's what you deserve," he hissed, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "You've always been poison to this family." I should have been furious. I should have screamed or cried or run from the room. Instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made Marcus's expression falter just slightly. Because what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been waiting for exactly this moment. For him to lose control. For him to show everyone who he really was. "You're right, Marcus," I said quietly, reaching into my clutch purse with steady hands. "I am poison. But only to people who deserve it." I pulled out a thick manila envelope. The paper was slightly damp from the champagne, but the contents inside were perfectly intact. Documents I had been carrying with me all night, waiting for the right moment. Marcus had just given it to me. The gasps that followed weren't because of the champagne. They were because of what I was about to reveal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why my brother assaulted me at his own wedding reception, why I let it happen, and why what came next destroyed him completely, you need to know how we got here. It started 6 months earlier, the day our father died. Dad had been sick for 2 years. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed too late. I had moved back to Charlotte from Atlanta to help care for him. I took a leave of absence from my job as a financial analyst, subletting my apartment, essentially putting my life on hold. Marcus, meanwhile, continued living his life in Miami, visiting once every few months for a weekend, always with an excuse about work or his girlfriend or some commitment he couldn't break. But when Dad died, Marcus was suddenly very interested in family. The will reading was scheduled for a week after the funeral. Our family attorney, Richard Pemberton, a silver-haired man who had known Dad for 30 years, gathered us in his downtown office. Mom had passed away 8 years earlier from a stroke, so it was just Marcus, me, and Dad's younger sister, our Aunt Teresa. Richard opened the folder with Dad's last will and testament, cleared his throat, and began reading. The house, Dad's pride and joy, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Myers Park worth approximately $1.2 million, was left to me. The vacation cabin in Asheville was left to Aunt Teresa. Dad's retirement accounts, investment portfolio, and savings, totaling roughly $800,000, were to be split evenly between Marcus and me. I watched my brother's face as Richard read the terms. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. When Richard finished, Marcus stood up so abruptly his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "This is bullshit," he said flatly. Richard looked at him over his reading glasses. "I understand this may not be what you expected, but she gets the house? The entire house?" Marcus pointed at me like I was something contaminated. "That house is worth more than twice what I'm getting from the retirement accounts." "The house was your father's to leave as he saw fit," Richard said calmly. He made his wishes very clear. Emma lived with him for the last 2 years, cared for him through his illness. So she manipulated him. Marcus turned to me, his face flushed. "You moved back here and played nurse so you could steal my inheritance." I had known this was coming. Dad had warned me. He had shown me the will 6 months before he died and told me Marcus would react badly. "I moved back because Dad was dying and someone needed to take care of him," I said quietly. "You visited 4 times in 2 years, Marcus." "4 times. I have a career. I couldn't just drop everything like you did. I had a career too. I gave it up." "Yeah, and you made sure Dad paid you back for it, didn't you?" His voice was venomous. "You probably whispered in his ear every night about how devoted you were, how I abandoned him." Aunt Teresa spoke up. "Marcus, that's enough. Your father made this decision on his own. Emma earned that house." "Earned it?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "She conned a dying man. I'm contesting this. I'm getting a lawyer and I'm contesting the entire will." Richard sighed. "You have that right, but I should tell you that your father anticipated this possibility. The will is ironclad." He was of completely sound mind when he drafted it. I have medical documentation to that effect, and he specifically included a no contest clause. If you challenge the will and lose, you forfeit your entire inheritance. Marcus stared at Richard for a long moment, then grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the office without another word. I sat there feeling numb. My brother had just accused me of manipulating our dying father. The same brother I had protected growing up, lent money to when he was broke in college, defended to our parents when he dropped out of business school to move to Miami with a girl he barely knew. He'll cool down, Aunt Teresa said, patting my hand. Give him time. But Marcus didn't cool down. He got worse. Over the next month, he called me 17 times. The calls started out angry, demanding I split the house value with him fairly. When I explained that I couldn't afford to buy out his theoretical half and I wasn't selling the house, he shifted tactics. He tried guilt. Reminded me of how close we used to be as kids. How Dad would have wanted us to share everything equally. Dad did want things to be fair, I told him during one call. That's why he left things the way he did. I sacrificed 2 years of my career and my entire life to care for him. You sent flowers twice and showed up for long weekends. So you're saying I'm a bad son? I'm saying Dad made his choice based on our actions. You're a selfish bitch, Emma. You always have been. He hung up. 2 days later, his lawyer sent me a letter indicating intent to challenge the will despite the no contest clause. Richard assured me it was a bluff, that no competent attorney would actually file given the evidence, but it put me on edge. Then Marcus showed up at the house. I was in the garden, planting tomatoes in the raised beds Dad and I had built together the spring before he got too sick to work outside. I heard the gate slam and turned to see Marcus storming across the lawn. We need to talk, he said. I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans. If you're here to yell at me again. I'm not here to yell. I'm here to make you an offer. He pulled out his phone, opened a document, and showed me. For $100,000. Cash. You sign over half ownership of the house to me, I pay you $400,000, and we're even. The house is worth $1.2 million, Marcus. Half would be $600,000. $400 is all I have liquid right now. You'd be getting that plus your half of Dad's retirement accounts. You'd walk away with $700,000 total. That's fair. What's fair is honoring Dad's wishes. His expression hardened. Take the deal, Emma. No. Take the goddamn deal. Get off my property. He stepped closer, invading my space. You're making a mistake. Marcus, leave. Now. Or I'm calling the police. He stared at me for a long, tense moment, then turned and walked away without another word. I watched him get into his BMW and peel out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the concrete. That was when I knew something was very wrong. Marcus wasn't just angry about the inheritance. He was desperate for the house. But why? He had a good job in Miami, or so he claimed. He drove a luxury car. His social media showed him at expensive restaurants and clubs. I decided to do what I do best. I started digging into his finances. It wasn't hard. Marcus and I had been joint signers on Dad's accounts during his illness, which meant I still had access to old bank statements and records. I also had Marcus's social security number from old tax documents Dad had kept. It wasn't legal, exactly, what I did next, but I justified it by telling myself I was protecting my inheritance and Dad's legacy. I pulled Marcus's credit report. What I found made my blood run cold. My brother was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out to the tune of $90,000. A car loan he was 3 months behind on. A personal loan from some sketchy online lender with a 28% interest rate. But the worst part was the liens. 2 separate creditors had filed liens against him, which meant they were coming after his assets. Marcus didn't want the house because of sentimentality or fairness. He needed it because he was about to lose everything. I kept digging. I hacked into his email, I know, illegal, but I was past caring about that, using a password he had used for everything since college. What I found in his messages was even worse than the debt. For the last year, Marcus had been running an investment scheme. He had convinced at least a dozen people, mostly friends and acquaintances from Miami, to invest in a cryptocurrency venture he claimed would triple their money in 6 months. He had collected over $300,000 from these people. The venture didn't exist. He had spent the money paying off his own debts and funding his lifestyle. It was a Ponzi scheme, textbook fraud. And the investors were starting to ask questions. Several email threads showed people demanding their returns, their original investments back, threatening to go to the police. Marcus had replied to all of them the same way. Big payout coming next month. Family estate settling. You'll get everything you're owed plus 20% extra for the delay. He was planning to steal Dad's house, sell it, and use the money to pay off the people he had defrauded. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the printed emails, feeling sick. My brother wasn't just greedy. He was a criminal. And he was trying to use our father's home, the house Dad had worked his entire life to pay off, the house where we had grown up, where Mom had died, where I had held Dad's hand during his final days to cover his crimes. I should have gone to the police right then, but I didn't, because I had a better idea. If Marcus wanted to destroy himself, I was going to let him. But I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who he was when he fell. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. I documented everything. The credit reports, the emails, the bank statements showing transfers from his victims into his accounts, and then immediately out to pay his creditors and fund personal expenses. I contacted a few of his investors anonymously, posing as another victim, and got them to send me screenshots of texts and messages from Marcus promising returns. Then I hired a forensic accountant on the down low, paying cash, and had him compile everything into a comprehensive report. The accountant, a retired IRS investigator named Donald who did private work, told me I had enough evidence to send Marcus to federal prison for wire fraud. You planning to press charges? Donald asked, handing me the bound report. Not yet, I said. But I want to be ready when the time comes. I locked the report in a safe deposit box at my bank. And then I waited. Marcus called me 3 days later, his voice uncharacteristically friendly. Hey, Em. Listen, I'm sorry about how I acted. I was grieving and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I said nothing. I'm getting married, he continued. Jennifer, my girlfriend, I proposed last week. We're doing a big wedding in June. I'd really love for you to be there. I know things have been rough between us, but you're my sister. I want you standing beside me on the most important day of my life. Every instinct told me this was a manipulation. But I played along. Congratulations, Marcus. That's wonderful. I'd love to come. Really? He sounded genuinely relieved. That's great. And listen, I've been thinking about Dad's will. You're right. He made his choice, and I need to respect that. The house is yours. I'm dropping the legal challenge. I just want us to be family again. He was lying. I knew he was lying. But I said, I want that too. Over the next 3 months, Marcus kept up the act. He called every week to update me on wedding plans. He invited me to the engagement party in Miami, where I met Jennifer, a sweet, naive 26-year-old who clearly had no idea who she was marrying. He even asked me to be a bridesmaid. I played the role of reconciled sister perfectly. I flew to Miami for dress fittings. I contributed money to the bridal shower. I smiled and hugged Marcus and told him how happy I was for him, all while watching his financial situation deteriorate further. The investors were getting more aggressive. One threatened legal action. Another showed up at Marcus's apartment demanding cash. Marcus put them off with increasingly desperate lies, promising the estate was almost settled, there were just some legal complications, the money was coming any day. He even tried one more time to get me to sell the house. He called me 6 weeks before the wedding, his voice careful and measured. So, I've been thinking. I'm getting married, starting a new life with Jennifer. We want to buy a house in Miami, somewhere nice where we can start a family. But with the wedding expenses and everything, money's tight. If you were willing to sell Dad's place and split the proceeds, it would really help us get started. I'd be willing to take just 1/3 instead of half. For $100,000. That's all I need. I'm not selling, Marcus. Emma, please. I'm asking you as your brother. I said no. Long pause. Then, quietly, you're going to regret this. The line went dead. I knew then that Marcus was going to do something at the wedding. I didn't know what, but I knew his mask would slip. He was too desperate, too cornered. So I prepared. I made 3 copies of Donald's forensic report. I put one in my safe deposit box, one with Richard Pemberton with instructions to open it if anything happened to me, and one I carried with me to Miami for the wedding. The wedding itself was absurdly lavish. Marcus had rented out a resort on Key Biscayne, with the ceremony on the beach and the reception in a massive ballroom overlooking the ocean. There were ice sculptures, a 12-piece band, premium open bar, the works. I estimated the whole event cost at least $70,000. Money Marcus didn't have. I later found out he had taken out a loan against Jennifer's parents' goodwill. They were paying for half, believing Marcus was contributing the other half, when in reality, he had borrowed the money from another shady lender using forged documents claiming he had equity in Dad's house. The ceremony was beautiful. Jennifer looked radiant. Marcus looked like a man at the end of his rope trying to smile through it. I stood beside 5 other bridesmaids, wearing the pale blue dress Marcus had picked out, holding my bouquet, watching my brother promise to love and cherish someone he was actively deceiving. The reception started smoothly. Cocktail hour, dinner, speeches. Marcus's best man told stories about their college days. Jennifer's maid of honor cried happy tears. I sat at the family table, sipping champagne, waiting. The explosion came during the open dancing, about an hour into the reception. I was talking with Aunt Teresa near the bar when I saw one of the guests, a man in his 40s I didn't recognize, approach Marcus on the dance floor. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Marcus's face go white. He grabbed the man's arm and pulled him toward a side exit. I followed, keeping my distance. They argued in the hallway outside the ballroom, voices rising. I caught fragments. 3 months, Marcus, you promised. Not now, this is my wedding. Don't care, I want my money or I'm calling the FBI. Just give me 2 more weeks. You're out of time, you're out of chances. The man stormed off. Marcus stood there, shaking. Then he turned and saw me. How much did you hear? Enough. He walked toward me, his face transforming from panic to rage. This is your fault. All of this. If you had just sold the house like I asked, none of this would be happening. Your fraud scheme isn't my fault, Marcus. His eyes went wide. What did you say? I know everything. The fake crypto investment. The $300,000 you stole. The loans, the liens, the lies. I know all of it. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His fists clenched. His whole body tensed. Then, something in him snapped in a different direction. You don't know anything, he said. And even if you did, you have no proof. I have all the proof I need. Bullshit. Bank statements. Emails. Testimony from your victims. A full forensic accounting report. Everything. He stared at me. You're lying. I'm not. And I've been carrying it with me all night, waiting to see what you'd do. That was when Marcus completely lost control. He grabbed my arm, dragged me back into the ballroom, and before I could react, he snatched a champagne bottle from a nearby table and poured the entire contents over my head. The music stopped. The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare. That's what you deserve, Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You've always been poison to this family. I stood there, dripping, and smiled. Because he had just given me exactly what I needed, a public meltdown in front of 300 witnesses. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the envelope. You're right, Marcus. I am poison. But only to people who deserve it. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first page of Donald's report. I held it up so the guests at the nearest tables could see. My brother has been running an investment fraud scheme, I said, my voice calm and clear. For the last year, he has stolen over $300,000 from investors in a fake cryptocurrency venture. He planned to steal and sell our late father's house to cover his crimes. This document contains all the evidence. The gasp started. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus lunged for the envelope, but I stepped back. There are copies, I said. In 3 separate locations. You can't destroy this. Marcus's face was purple. You bitch. You insane, vindictive. The man who confronted you in the hallway, that was David Chin, right? One of your investors? He's here at your wedding because you told him he'd get paid tonight from your family estate. I looked at David, who was standing near the back of the room, staring at Marcus with dawning horror. He's not going to pay you, David. He never was. He doesn't have access to any estate. He has nothing but debt. Another guest stood up, a younger man I recognized from Marcus's social media. You told me the same thing. You said you'd double my investment. And mine, a woman at another table said, standing. $20,000, Marcus. You promised me 40. Suddenly, 5, 6, 7 people were on their feet, all of them Marcus's victims, all of them realizing they had been duped. Jennifer, Marcus's brand new wife, stood at the head table looking like her world was collapsing. Marcus, what is she talking about? Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at the crowd of angry investors closing in around him. Jennifer's father, a large man in his 60s who had paid for half this wedding, stood up. Someone explain what the hell is going on. I turned to him. Your new son-in-law is a con artist. He defrauded at least 12 people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He also forged documents claiming he owned property to secure the loan for this wedding. You might want to contact a lawyer. Jennifer started crying. Her mother rushed to her side. Marcus pointed at me, his hand trembling. She's lying. She's been trying to destroy me since Dad died because she's jealous. I have bank records, I said loudly, cutting him off. Emails in your own words. Testimony. A forensic accountant's report. You're done, Marcus. David Chin pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. That was when Marcus ran. He bolted for the exit, shoving guests out of his way. 2 of the male guests tried to stop him, but he pushed past them and disappeared out the main doors. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Jennifer was sobbing. Her family was shouting. The investors were demanding answers. The wedding band had stopped playing and was standing on stage watching the disaster unfold. I stood in the center of it all, soaking wet, holding the evidence that would destroy my brother. Aunt Teresa appeared at my side. Emma, what have you done? What I had to do? The police arrived within 20 minutes. Someone, probably David Chin, had called them. 2 officers took statements from me and several of the investors. I handed them a copy of the forensic report. They put out an alert for Marcus. He was arrested 6 hours later at the Miami airport, trying to board a flight to Mexico. He didn't have a passport, didn't have luggage, didn't have a plan. Just pure panic. The fallout was spectacular. Marcus was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The evidence I had provided made the case airtight. He tried to claim I had fabricated everything, but the bank records and emails were verified as authentic. His investors, coordinated by David Chin, filed a civil lawsuit. Jennifer filed for annulment within a week, claiming fraud. She had married him believing he was financially stable, and the truth meant the marriage was based on lies. Marcus's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor wasn't interested. The case went to trial 8 months later. I testified for 2 hours, walking the jury through Marcus's debts, his scheme, his attempts to steal Dad's house. He was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Jennifer's father sued him for the wedding costs. The investors won their civil case and were awarded a judgment that Marcus would never be able to pay. As for me, I kept the house. I renovated the garden, adding roses along the back fence like Mom used to have. I started a new job with a financial firm in Charlotte. I moved on. Aunt Teresa stopped speaking to me for 3 months after the wedding, claiming I had destroyed the family. But eventually, she came around. She visited the house, sat in the kitchen with me over coffee, and admitted that Marcus had made his own choices. I just wish you had handled it differently, she said. How should I have handled it? Quietly. Privately. Not at his wedding. He assaulted me at his wedding, I said. In front of 300 people. He thought I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. I never visited Marcus in prison. He wrote me one letter, 6 months into his sentence. It was 3 pages of rage and blame, calling me every name imaginable, swearing he would make me pay someday. I burned the letter and never wrote back. Looking back now, 2 years later, people ask me if I regret it. If I wish I had just gone to the police from the beginning, avoided the public confrontation, let the system handle it. The answer is no. Marcus needed everyone to see who he really was. He had spent his entire adult life crafting an image successful, charming, the golden boy who could do no wrong. He had manipulated our father, manipulated Jennifer, manipulated all those investors. The only way to stop him was to rip the mask off in front of everyone who believed in him. Could I have done it differently? Sure. But would it have been as effective? Would those investors have gotten the closure of watching him exposed? Would Jennifer have seen the truth in time to save herself? No. Sometimes you have to be ruthless to get justice. Sometimes you have to let someone think they've won, let them get comfortable, let them attack you in public, and then you show the world exactly who they are. That champagne Marcus poured over me at his wedding? Best shower I ever took. Because it washed away any guilt I might have felt about destroying him. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone was watching when he did. The house is mine. The truth is out. And Marcus is exactly where he belongs. As for what happened after the trial, the house remains my sanctuary. I turned Dad's old office into my workspace, keeping his favorite armchair by the window where he used to read. The garden bloomed better than ever last summer. Sometimes Aunt Teresa brings over dinner and we sit on the back porch, talking about Mom and Dad, carefully avoiding the subject of Marcus. Jennifer reached out to me once, about a year after the annulment. She wanted to apologize for not believing me sooner, for thinking I was the jealous sister Marcus always claimed I was. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She was a victim too. We don't keep in touch, but I hope she found someone worthy of her. The investors all received partial compensation through the criminal restitution process, though they'll never recover their full losses. David Chin thanked me personally, shaking my hand outside the courthouse after the verdict. He said I had more courage than anyone he'd ever met. I don't know about courage. I just know about consequences. Marcus's prison release date is in 4 more years. I've already made it clear through my lawyer that if he contacts me, approaches my property, or attempts any retaliation, I'll file for a restraining order immediately. I don't think he'll be stupid enough to try anything. Prison has a way of teaching people that actions have consequences. But just in case, I keep copies of everything in 3 separate locations. The evidence, the trial transcripts, documentation of his threats. If he ever tries to rewrite history, to claim he was the victim and I was the villain, I have the truth ready to deploy. Because that's what this was always about. The truth is simple. Marcus is a con artist who defrauded innocent people and tried to steal from his dying father's estate. I'm the daughter who sacrificed 2 years of her life to care for that father, who inherited what she earned, and who refused to let her brother's crimes go unpunished. Some people think I went too far. That I should have reported him quietly to the FBI and let them handle it. That exposing him at his wedding was cruel, vindictive, over the top. Those people didn't watch Dad deteriorate for 2 years while Marcus sent occasional text messages asking how he was doing. They didn't hear Marcus accuse me of manipulating a dying man. They didn't watch him try to steal everything Dad worked for to cover up his crimes. They don't understand that sometimes the only way to deal with a narcissist, a con artist, someone who has spent their entire life manipulating everyone around them, is to back them into a corner and force them to reveal themselves. Marcus thought he could pour champagne on me at his wedding and humiliate me into silence. He thought I was weak, that I would take the abuse and slink away. He forgot that I spent 2 years being strong for Dad. Fighting with insurance companies, managing medications, making impossible medical decisions, holding steady while everything fell apart. He forgot that I'm a financial analyst trained to spot fraud and follow money trails. Most of all, he forgot that we came from the same parents. The same stubborn, determined, justice-minded parents who taught us that you don't let bullies win, you don't reward bad behavior, and you always stand up for what's right. Dad would have been proud of me. I know that because he told me 6 months before he died, when he showed me the will, and I asked him if he was sure about giving me the house. "You earned it, Emma," he said, his voice weak but firm. "Not just because you took care of me, but because you're the one who'll protect it. You're the one with integrity." Marcus lost his way somewhere, and I hope he finds it again, but I can't reward the path he's chosen. You understand. I understood then, and I understand now. The house isn't just a building worth $1.2 million. It's a symbol. A family of memory of the values Dad lived by. It's the place where he taught me to ride a bike, where Mom hosted Thanksgiving dinners, where I held Dad's hand as he took his last breath. Marcus wanted to liquidate that. Turn it into cash to pay off criminals and victims and lenders. Erase everything it represented to cover his own mistakes. I couldn't let that happen. So I didn't. And when Marcus finally lost control at his wedding, when he threw champagne in my face in front of hundreds of witnesses, he gave me the perfect stage to reveal everything. Was it dramatic? Absolutely. Was it brutal? Without question. Was it necessary? Every single moment. Because Marcus wasn't going to stop. He was going to keep lying, keep stealing, keep manipulating until someone forced him to face consequences. His investors would have lost everything. Jennifer would have spent years married to a con artist. He might have even tried to forge documents to claim the house after I died, leaving Aunt Teresa to fight legal battles against his fraud. I ended it. Completely. Publicly. Permanently. And I'd do it again. The garden is blooming. The house is mine. Dad's legacy is protected. And Marcus is in a federal prison in Georgia, learning that the world doesn't revolve around him. Justice isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's messy and public and brutal. Sometimes it requires you to let someone assault you so they can show everyone who they really are. Sometimes it requires you to stand in the middle of a ballroom, soaking wet, holding evidence that will destroy your own brother and refusing to back down. But it's still justice. And that's what Dad taught me mattered most. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had to expose a family member's lies? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences. And if you want more stories about family drama, justice, and people getting what they deserve, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.